Good evening. I'd like to call to order the council meeting of Monday, March 21st, 2022. Can we all stand for the playing of the national anthem? Niagara region and Grinsby are situated on treaty land. This land is steeped in the rich history of the First Nations, such as the Hattaway, the Haudenosaunee, and the Anishinaabe, including the Mississaugas of the Credit First Nation. There are many First Nations, Métis, and Inuit people from across Turtle Island that live and work in Niagara today. The regional municipality of Niagara and the town of Grinsby stands with all Indigenous peoples, past and present, in promoting the wise stewardship of the lands on which we live. Are there any disclosures of pecuniary interest? Seeing none, before we get to the approval of the agenda, just that tonight we'll be commencing with our council agenda, as there are items from March 7th, 2022 meeting that are still outstanding. And just an announcement, it's with deep sadness that I have to announce the passing of Carol Andrechuk, longtime partner of former Mayor Nick Andrechuk. Carol will be sorely and greatly missed by all in Grinsby. It's just a tragedy that Carol has passed away. Before we do approval of the agenda, as you may notice tonight, our meetings had to remain fully virtual. I just wanted to ask Philip, our director of IT, to make a few comments as to why we had to stay in this virtual capacity and not getting back to hybrid meetings, or getting two hybrid meetings for the first time in 2 years. So thanks, Philip.
Sure. Thank you, Mayor, for the opportunity to update council. Good evening, councillors. Through you, Mayor. As you know, through report CAO 2203 provided to council at your last meeting, the town had laid out a timeline for implementation of the technology required to support both in-person and remote attendees for council and committee of the whole. As I reported early last week to you, during the final phase of testing, we discovered inconsistent results where the system would go offline and become unresponsive, in many cases for several minutes. It's not acceptable. After notifying council early last week, we've been working hard to resolve the issues using a step troubleshooting method that we do in IT. I am pleased to preliminary report that our testing and monitoring over this past weekend has yielded some encouraging results, and we seem to have isolated a faulty component. It's still a little early to declare victory, as we would like to complete more testing and ensure reliability. But once I do have a more material update, I'll let you know, and we'll be working to reschedule the orientation sessions for yourselves, and of course, informing the public as appropriate at that time. I'd like to thank staff for all their hard work over the past number of days to get ahead of this, and I'm hoping to have something to you later this week.
Thank you, Philip. Now we move to, we need a mover and seconder for approval of the agenda. Moved by Councillor Frake, second by Councillor Barty. Moved by Councillor Frake, second by Councillor Barty. Resolved the agenda for the March 21st, 2022 council meeting be approved. Oh, Councillor Barty, you have your hand up?
Yeah, I'd like to lift an item. If I do it now, or do I wait a little bit from the minutes of February 22nd?
Yeah, you can wait for that and lift it when we adopt the previous minutes. That's when you lift it. All right, so I read the resolution, or I don't think I did actually. I'll read it again. Moved by Councillor Frake, second by Councillor Vardy. Resolve the agenda for March 21st, 2022 council meeting be approved. All in favor? That's carried. Now we move to adoption of the previous minutes. Councillor Vardy, you'd like to lift something?
Yeah, I'd like to lift the Wolverton portion of the February 22nd minutes.
That is so noted. So we need a seconder for that, Councillor Frake, or yeah, I see your hand. Moved by Councillor Vardy, second by Councillor Frake. Resolved that resolution number CW 22-60 of the Committee of the Whole minutes of February 22nd, 2022 be lifted for separate consideration. All in favor? Actually, no, I see all the hands up now. Okay, that's carried.
Mayor Jordan, can we have a recorded vote?
Sure. Recorded vote as requested by Councillor Sharp.
Councillor Bothwell,
Yes.
Councillor Dunstall,
Yes.
Councillor Frake,
Yes.
Councillor Cowell,
Yes.
Councillor Sharp,
No.
Councillor Rain,
No.
Councillor Vardy,
Yes.
Mayor Jordan,
Yes.
that's carried.
Okay, yeah, so we can discuss this, the lifted item, since it was carried, so we can populate a speakers list now.
Mayor
Councillor
Jordan,
Vardy.
what was the item? What was the item on the agenda? 22. What number?
Sarah? 2260.
2260. Thank you.
Councillor Vardy.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. I'd like us to revisit this item because honestly, I think it's really important that we do so. I've come to learn that there was maybe some behind the scenes activity that we're trying to lump three developments together and trying to get LPAT to look at them collectively. Which, from my understanding, failed. My concern is, if we look at what happened recently in Stony Creek, where a developer had come to terms with their town council to do a 5-story building, originally coming down from, I think, 9, that they then went to the land tribunal, and the land tribunal gave them 11. So where they started at 9, agreed on 5, then went to the land tribunal and got 11. So my concern is, one, the 3 developments in question, the Wilverton and the 2 on Main Street East, are radically different. The zoning is radically different. The Wolverton is zoned for intensification. we are going 1 story over the allowable. And there is clearly a shortage of rental units available. And I can tell you of a recent experience where, my good friend and neighbor, who was burned out of her home, had such a hard time finding a place to live that she was actually in a bidding war for a rental. So that kind of gives you an idea that there just isn't very much out there for people who may want to rent in Grinsby. Now, in her case, it was a house, but we don't have enough rental apartments, and we really do need to have them. And I think we need to reconsider this. We have an opportunity to work with a developer who has had, up until that point, complete support from the town, and thought it had complete support from most councillors until the night of the vote. And I really think that we've had a developer that has gone above and beyond to give us public space. And I really think we need to look very carefully at this. And I think that we really need to move forward with this development. And once again, this development is radically different from what's being proposed on Main Street East. This is an intensification zone. If they go to LPAT, and I shouldn't say if, they will go to LPAT, and we won't be looking at 7 stories. We're probably going to be looking at more, because the push is on to as we know from the province, to do more and more. And we've all been given targets. And here's an opportunity to work with a developer who will honor his 7 stories. And we know when he goes to LPAT, he will get exactly what he wants and more. So I really think it's to our benefit that we re-examine this and support this development, because the community needs it. This has so many pluses that I think we need to move forward with it. And those are my comments. Thank you.
Councillor Sharp.
Yeah, thanks, Mayor Jordan. I just wanted to clarify, in that downtown intensification zone, it allows 4 stories as of right. And there's some language about that council can approve up to 6 stories at their discretion. There's 0 language about 7 stories. 7 stories is not allowed. And I don't know if you remember, but we had a whole campaign, no more than 4. We said heritage, not high rises. And I mean, 7 stories is mid-rise, not high rise. But I think that we need to defend our downtown as a low rise, person scale, like area of town. When you walk downtown, you should be able to see the buildings beside you and not have to crane up. And like, that was an under crane up. I mean, like, to see 7 stories from on the sidewalk it's nearly impossible. And Councillor Vardy says that she almost threatens us that they will get more if we go to the LPAT. So our official plan, it allows 4 stories.
Point of order, Mayor. To use the word threatened, I think, is inappropriate.
So I'll change my Mayor Jordan, I'll change. So Councillor Vardy tells us that they will get more if they go. So they've already applied for 7. So apparently these guys, so the people it was LJM in the Stony Creek development, and they went for more. I don't know what it was, 11 stories instead of 6. There was a change in the application. So like, we have no reason to believe that this developer is going to change the application. I don't know if they've made some intent towards Councillor Vardy that they plan to change to 11 stories, but the LPAT doesn't change it to 11 stories. The developer has to amend their application to 11 stories, and then the LPAT has to approve their application without us. So right now they're asking us to approve 7 stories. What's allowed as of right is 4 stories. There's some language about up to 6 stories. At our discretion, the development at 7 stories, which is not allowed, it doesn't meet the parking. There's other things but so if you want more than what's allowed, 4 stories, you have to come to the table with a development that meets what's required, and it doesn't. So I believe it's 26 spaces deficient. And don't worry, there's plenty of spaces for those residents to park downtown. That's at the liquor store, behind CIBC Bank, and across from that fish and chips place and laundromat, over at the GBF, in the Food Basics parking lot, on Main Street, on Elm Street. It's like, those are the spots where people, where residents park to go downtown, and we already have a shortage of parking at certain times of the day. And 26 spaces, it's not like, 3 spaces they're going to borrow from the town. 26 spaces. So I want to close and say the official plan allows as of right that we can't say no to 4 stories. We can say no to 7 stories. We did say no to 7 stories. And so we have Councillor Vardy lifting this right now, and a bunch of councillors supporting us to reconsider, or not reconsider, but separately consider this item that has already been considered. 4 stories downtown, no more than 4. Thanks.
Councillor Frake.
Thank you, Mayor Jordan. I think that Councillor Sharp is kind of bending the application that was filed as well, because I believe the staff has recommended we move ahead with this. So in most cases, we always vote with staff. All of a sudden, we're not. I think this is a great development for downtown. It's not downtown per se, but it is in an area of the downtown, just adjacent to the downtown, where we can approve up to that number of stories, and it is needed. We do need rentals in Grinsby, and there's one. I mean, we need rentals in Niagara region. I mean, everybody is chomping at the bit to get a building like this into their community, and here we are. We have it right in front of us, and it's an opportune time to be leaders in that area. So, I mean, yes, there's some parking deficiencies. I agree. And I never thought I would agree with that. But in this case, I just think it's great that we got an opportunity to get some good rental units downtown. And because if rental units downtown where it's located is perfect for all the things that are going up around it. They can walk to Main Street, they can walk to Food Basics, they can walk to other places. It's a perfect place for people to rent who may not want to have a car in this case. But so I think we should approve this. I really do. I know the last time we talked about this, there was some confusion downtown about parking because someone downtown decided to assume that the developer was going to build a road from their building, or a traffic road from their building into Balsam Lane. That is untrue. There was no truth in that ever. It's a walkway, and it's a walkway to permit people from that building to walk downtown and spend their money at all the different places downtown. And I mean, it was never meant, so it got misconstrued. There was an error in the community, and I think it's wrong. But anyways, I think we should move ahead with this. I think it's totally different than the 2 buildings that we will be considering again on Main Street East. Totally different, totally 100% different, in a different area altogether. So anyways, I hope that we can get some support tonight. Anyways, I thank you for your time, and no questions. I think we've already had the questions last time around. Anyway, thank you, Mayor.
Councillor Bothwell.
Thank you, Mayor Jordan. And I think I also supported this development. I was a strong advocate for 4 stories in the downtown Main Street designation. We need to make it very clear, and it's easy to say, let's just lump all of downtown into one big zoning. It's not all the same. The official plan very, very clearly has specific criteria for each of those zones. The downtown Main Street is 4 stories. The downtown intensification, where this is located, and the downtown transition zones are totally different. You can't, again, like Councillor Sharp is proposing, the official plan has Councillor Sharp, I think.
He's on.
Okay, thank you. The zones are clearly outlined in the official plan. It's not just height. There's a whole bunch of other criteria that each zone must adhere to. And the official plan was done with a lot of public consultation at that time as to where the intensification should happen. The West End and the downtown. How that happens in the downtown is through those three different specific zones. How do we protect our heritage? We protect our downtown Main Street and the heritage of the downtown Main Street to 4 stories. It's very clear. The intensification, downtown intensification, is meant for intensification. It says, council may, in consultation with the Niagara Escarpment Commission, consider building up to 6 stories, provided a visual impact assessment is submitted and the angular plane requirements are implemented. Visual impact assessment must demonstrate that views of the escarpment are not detrimentally impacted. So it's not just council, it's council in consultation with the Niagara Escarpment Commission. The Niagara Escarpment Commission provided a report to support this development. They clearly in their report indicated that there was no detrimental impact to the view corridors. Staff wrote their report, they supported it. So when council reads the official plan and looks at what was presented to us, I'm looking at what NEC presented to council through that report and through the staff report. And it's clearly saying that it's not detrimentally impacted from all the site view corridor studies that were done. If it were, I would have had serious concerns. I don't, because it's saying there isn't. So 6 stories is permitted based on the official plan in consultation with the NEC, which happened. So it's 1 story above. Parking, 23 spaces, 26. I can't remember what the exact amount was. It was deficient. It's a well-known fact that the OLT looks at parking, looks at downtown, looks at the walkability thing and says, that's a moot point. And you don't win on parking deficiency. We have to deal with parking. We know that it's in our budget. It's a priority for this council, but it's not something that you can deny an application on because it just doesn't get anywhere, especially in a downtown intensification zone. To say 23 or 26 spaces is, we're going to give it up. We're going to turn down the whole development because of that. That doesn't make sense to spend the money we're going to spend at OLT to defend that. As Councillor Frake noted too, as the delegates had presented, this is a much needed rental units are much needed in our downtown. The spec recently had an article, and I actually just threw it out but I was going to scan it, that talked about the number of units that are posted on Kijiji or wherever, and you can look at them. And they still said that no matter what number of units are posted for rental, it still does not meet the demand. And even so, it was clearly, there were studies that are saying right now that the rental units that are posted and advertised do not meet the percentage of demand that's out there right now. And I can find that and provide to whoever wants. But so, you can say, well, there's this many posted. So we have to look at how we meet those needs in our community. And I just think that we are getting something that respects the heritage of the two buildings that are there, and gives us a nice green space, public green space, so that you're not having it built right to the sidewalk, which is what he could have done. He could have not put green space. And when you talk about visual impact, you would be standing there looking at 4 stories or more, basically right at the sidewalk. So this is set back. This gives us that community area and gathering area, and the partnership with the GBF as well. So I just, from everything that I've looked at, I have to say that council, in my mind, this is a development that I would support. Thank you.
Councillor Dunstall.
Thank you, Your Worship. Well, I voted to lift this so I could hear what my colleagues had to say, because of the committee of the whole meeting, we had a vote of 7-2 to defeat it. And now we're talking a different tune. We have 2 other developments at OLT, and I have one of my colleagues is suggesting that If this goes to OLT, it'll become more than 7 stories. So are we not concerned about the other 2 developments that are at OLT? And is it only this development that we're concerned about? Because we're going to spend a lot of money at OLT for those other 2 developments, but that's okay. We have said that that's okay as a council. So, but here we are, parking deficiency, and we think that, well, we're not going to win because the OLT will, it's not a concern. But here it is in downtown, and we're not talking 3 or 4 city blocks away from our main street. We're talking a block and a half away. I do not believe that that promenade is going to be a very pleasant place to sit when, if you ever stand on the sidewalk on Mountain Street, and I know some of my colleagues have, as Councillor Cadwell and I have both stood on Mountain Street, and it's one of the noisiest streets in all of Grinsby, with all the tractor trailers coming down the hill and using their Jake brakes, and all you can hear is boom, 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 boom. I do not know why I would want to sit on a patio or a promenade eating anything with that kind of noise and the smell of diesel. So that's another thing. I don't think that depicted the architect's picture depicted what would in real life what it would be like. The other thing is it's 7 stories right in the heart of our downtown. We wouldn't let the other developer downtown even go pop up to 5 stories when you couldn't even see it from the street. We've pushed and pushed and pushed for 4 stories, and we eventually got it. And the other comment I want to make is about the developer and his approach to us that particular night. I thought it was less than pleasant, and I thought maybe we might hear an apology from him after the way he acted and behaved, but I didn't hear a thing. I wasn't impressed with how he behaved in a public forum, and it just, so I'm still not voting in favor of this development the way it stands. We do need intensification. We have needed intensification for an awful long time. I own rental property downtown, and for the last 15 years, the town of Grinsby has had a very low vacancy rate, probably 0 most of the time. I've never had any problem renting. Yes, we do need rental properties, but I have a hard time believing that building will become a rental property. I can't imagine what those units would rent for with the cost of what it's going to cost per square foot to build that. With the 2.5 levels of underground parking, it's atrociously expensive to say it's going to be a rental property. In my opinion, I'm having a hard time believing that that's going to be a rental property. Those are going to be condos at the end of the day, because nobody will be able to afford to pay the rent. It'll be too expensive. It's not affordable. And so I leave it at that.
Councillor Bain.
I have to agree with, well, pretty much all the councillors' comments. The councillor Frake made it quite clear, and I agree with him 100% that we do need a lot more, what do we call it, rental units, and not just in Niagara region, as Councillor Frake pointed out, but also pretty much across Ontario. There's just no rental units available, and the ones that are available are very tiny. I had a friend of mine tell me the other day they went to rent a condo unit for almost $2,000, and it was the side bedroom closet. So, I joked with them and said, what do? Do they have a pull-out bed in the men's room or in the restroom? So I agree, there is truly a need out there. I totally agree with that. But at the same time, I do agree with Councillor Dunstall. I do believe that there's a good possibility that these will be turned into condos. I asked the question to Mr. Basic at the last meeting, why is each unit being deeded separately from the others, which doesn't make any sense for an apartment for me. Having said all that, though, and I mean, I personally, and I'm trying to look at this from a third person point of view, I'm thinking from the LT, the land transfer, OMB, whatever it's called now. Anyways, I'm trying to look at it from their point of view. If I am the adjudicator and I have the Century Condos developer come in, for example, and say, oh, well, you've got one 200 feet away from me, and we're going to go in and say, oh yeah, well, our development is, our planning act is different. You know, they're 200 feet apart, but Main Street, well, no, that's different. Well, oof. I think we're opening a can of worms here, people. I really do. I think, you know, and I know that we've gone into meetings before where some members of this council are willing to throw hundreds of thousands of dollars just to fight a development, even though we know we can't win. And yet we're going to roll over and basically open the door for their appeals. So I kind of agree with Councillor Sharp and Councillor Dunstall, and I do agree with Councillor Frake's point of view that we do need rentals, and I agree with all that. But I think this is something better that we need to do. And I know Councillor Sharp used the point that we're being threatened. It's not necessarily a threat per se. It's every developer says that. You know, it's the same as every developer comes in and says, well, I bought a property, no, it was only zoned for 4 stories, but I can't make any money. Well, then why did you buy it? And, you know, you come in and you say, well, you know, I want 7 stories. Well, the residents don't. And a lot of residents have spoken. I'm really surprised at some members of this council that we're going against the residents' wishes here. But that's just my opinion. I'm going to support the residents and the businesses in the area, which have stated very clearly. Some of them are very terrified of this fact that we're going to allow this particular development to be lacking 26 parking spots from what our plan says. But let's be realistic. Most units, and then I've seen this in every development, have 2 or 3 vehicles. So we can pretend it's only 26 units. And as Councillor Sharp said, a lot of those spaces taken up will be taken up. And then our people won't be able to shop there, or we're going to have more businesses going bankrupt on Main Street. I don't agree with it. I just don't agree with it at this point. I think it needs to be open to negotiation. We've had other developers that have come in and bent over backwards, as Councillor Dunstall said for us, and they've worked with us to come in and say, well, I'm going to go to the OLT or whatever. That's fine. I mean, that's a reality, but I'm not going to give away the farm on one development while we're telling all the rest they can't do it. So that's just my opinion. I won't be supporting it. Thank you.
Councillor Cadwell.
Thanks, Mayor. And listen to everybody speak. I'm going to stick to how I voted on this development the last time we took the vote. I'm not going to support it. Talking about intensification, yeah, Grinsby has to meet our intensification levels that are somewhat mandated. Well, they are mandated by the province. And I think the place to meet the intensification is the West End, which has been happening the last number of years. And even with the proposed the ghost station will be coming. There will be some more intensification out that way too. Fifth wheel property, lots going to be coming there, and when things get moving and that. So yeah, I'm not big on that we have to have intensification of 7 stories in the at the Elm Street, Mountain Street area there. Also, the part that really I had a lot of concern about the last meeting was and I know whether it's 4 stories or 6 stories or 7 stories, the entrance and exit to that property coming off about 100 yards north of the traffic light on Mountain Street. That is going to create some unbelievable challenges. Again, somebody mentioned about rentals at downtown. You don't need cars. Yeah, you don't if you've got public transit, a good form of public transit. But we don't have that right now. It's coming in a format. So yeah, to say that there'll be less cars in that development, I don't believe that. So anyways, I'll be short because I think it's going to be a long night. Yeah, I'm sticking to my that I'm not supporting. Thank you.
Councillor Vardy.
I'd like to call the question, please.
All right, the question has been called. Moved by Councillor Vardy, second by Councillor Frake. Resolved that report PA 22-06, proposed official plan amendment, file 26 OP 16-2101, zoning bylaw amendment, file number 26T 16-21-04, 19 Elm Street, 13 Mountain Street, dated February 22nd, 2022, be received.
Point of clarification here, Mayor Jordan, please. We're voting to call the question. You're reading the whole motion.
All right, sorry. Moved by Councillor Vardy, second by Councillor Frake. Resolved that the question be called for CW 22-60. Recorded vote.
Councillor Bothwell,
Just to be clear, this is a vote to call the question. I'm the only speaker left, but this is to call the question.
Yes, that's correct.
Okay, it's not to vote for the motion, just to call the question.
Yes.
I'm the last speaker.
So Councillor Bothwell,
Yes.
Councillor Dunstall,
No,
Councillor Frake,
Yes.
Councillor Cowell,
Nope.
Councillor Sharp,
No.
Councillor Vane,
No.
Councillor Vardy,
Yes.
Mayor Jordan.
Yes.
That's defeated.
Counselor Sharp.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor Jordan. I just had a couple things I want to talk about on this development. So one of the things Councillor Bothwell has talked about, like that this is not downtown. I mean, so I've lived here my whole life, and this area to me is downtown. Our zoning defines the downtown Main Street DMS and the downtown intensification differently. But so I'm going to talk to the people who live here. When you're driving on Main Street West, you're coming towards like east towards downtown, and Main Street West actually turns and goes in front of Trinity United Church. Right in front of the museum there, Main Street West turns into Elm Street. When you pull up to the pool and Food Basics, you're on Elm Street, but you haven't really left Main Street, right? So you, it feels like you're still on Main Street, and it feels like you're on Main Street until you come up to those lights by the TD Bank, although you're on Elm Street. And so some people, I mean, we all know Main Street actually turns and goes in front of Trinity United Church, comes out in front of the park by Milk and Things and Christie's Dairy and those gas stations there. But so this area, for a councillor to say, oh, it's not part of downtown, this is part of downtown. The actual framework of downtown, the roads and the grid that makes our downtown, that's part of it. It's also the entrance to downtown. When you come down Mountain Street, which a lot of people do come down Mountain Street from Smithville and the area south of Grinsby, this is the entrance. That is the corner intersection of downtown. You come into there, and here you are. Welcome to Grimsby. So one of the things I wanted to mention about the parking is just recently I got a call from the businesses downtown, or one of the businesses, but she was speaking for many of those business employees. They recently got ticketed by the town, and that doesn't happen very often. There's a time limit for parking behind on Balsam Lane, and a lot of the employees that work for the stores and stuff downtown, I mean, they park near the bank and behind the post office and those areas, and it's owned by the town, and it's a 2-hour parking. And so one of our bylaw officers went through and they ticketed, they chalked or somehow marked all the cars, and they ticketed them. And I think it's a $40 ticket. And so of course I get complaints from the residents, oh, we got ticketed. And so taking away, allowing a developer to come in that's not self-sufficient, it doesn't have even the minimum requirement, never mind the actual amount of parking spaces that will be used, it doesn't even meet our minimum standard by 26 spaces deficient. And so the other thing I want to say is this isn't the only development downtown. We're going to see 87 units at Century Condos. Someone bought the Teddy's, and it's now changing hands to a new owner, but I've heard rumors of development coming in there. Then eventually someone will buy that fish and chips place and those 2 burned down lots, and we'll see something there. And now we'll have the corner here, we'll have something, hopefully 4 stories. And then, I mean, maybe one day the GBF might sell, I have no idea, but that bank, like we can have it's a big spot, and maybe even the Station 1 or where M&M meets, like these are all areas that may be developed downtown. And as intensification goes, these are areas that could be intensified. So I know I've reached my time limit, so I just want to close with one thing, is that I will continue to stand up for low-rise development downtown. Low-rise is no more than 4 stories. Mid-rise is 5 to 11 stories. And I won't stand for mid-rise development downtown. This 7-story building is not allowed. 4 stories is allowed. 6 stories can be considered. 7 stories is not allowed. And I will stand for low-rise, 4 stories. We see 4 councillors on here that are going to fight with the developer for 7 stories. And the next developer is going to ask for 9, and the next developer is going to ask for 10, and we're going to see 12, 15 stories in some of those properties that I mentioned. We saw it at Grinsby on the Lake. It started at 4, it went to 6, it went to 9, it went to 18, and then they faked us out for 20, and now it's 22. I don't know how anyone can't see the writing on the wall. Thank you. My time is up. I appreciate the council taking the time to hear my last comments.
Councillor Vardy.
Thank you, through you, Mr. Mayor. I think a couple things with respect to parking. Maybe we should be looking at for employees issuing a certain number of paid permits because the 2-hour parking limit is there so that people can go and utilize those businesses. These aren't, dedicated spaces for, people who have 25 employees. And maybe that's part of the reason we got a parking problem. But I guess I would just like to say that when looking at the 3 developments, the 2 on Main Street East and the 1 in the downtown intensification area, I'm a pragmatist. The Wolverton, they will win at OLT, and understandably why. So I just hope that my colleagues who vote against this are equally strident in terms of following the zoning when it comes to Main Street East, because that's the area that needs protection. The Wolverton will help to keep the downtown alive. High-rise developments, mid-rise developments on Main Street East will kill Main Street East. So remember that. Thank you.
Councillor Bothwell.
Thank you, Mayor Jordan. And again, I echo Councillor Vardy's comments. They're very distinct and very unique differences between the Main Street East area and the downtown district. The downtown district, as Councillor Sharp says, yes, it's all of downtown, but the official plan does have 3 zonings and 3 specific areas in it, in the official plan and the zoning. And if he doesn't like it, we should change the official plan. We're going to come up for review. Let's change it. But for now, this is what developers have to work with. The official plan has made this an intensification area. Intensification, just like the West End, exactly the same. It's an intensification area. 3.5.5 downtown intensification says it's the intent of the town that the downtown intensification designation to provide opportunities for large scale commercial development, mixed use developments, and or significant residential intensification. So we can't justify 4 stories there. It says up to 6, as I mentioned, and 7 is just one above. I'd love to argue too and say the whole downtown should be 4, but that's not what our official plan says. So I'm going to say we need to fight for the Main Street East. It's a totally different zoning, neighborhood commercial. It's not intensification, totally different. But this one, we protect our downtown, we protect our 4 stories, but when it says intensification, that's what it means. And I think I have to support it because I think that's just, that's where we need it. Thank you.
Seeing no further speakers, moved by Councillor Vardy, second by Councillor Frake, resolved that report PA 22-06, proposed official plan amendment, file 26 OP 16-2101, zoning bylaw amendment, file 26T 16-2104, 19 Elm Street, 13 Mountain Street, dated February 22nd, 2022, be received, and that the draft official plan amendment attached to this report is Appendix A, be submitted to council for passage, and that the draft zoning bylaw amendment attached to this report is Appendix B, be approved in principle. Recorded vote.
Councillor Bothwell,
Yes.
Councillor Dunstall,
No.
Councillor Frake,
Yes.
Councillor Cowell,
Nope.
Councillor Sharp,
No.
Councillor Vane,
No.
Councillor Vardy,
Yes.
Mayor Jordan,
Yes.
that's defeated.
All right, moving to the remainder of the previous minutes. Need a mover and seconder for approval. Moved by Councillor Frake, second by Councillor Cadwell. Moved by Councillor Frake, second by Councillor Cadwell. Resolved that the Committee of the Whole meeting minutes of February 22nd, 2022, Council minutes of February 22nd, 2022, Committee of the Whole minutes of March 7th, 2022, and Council minutes of March 7th, 2022 be approved. And the Committee of the Whole of 2022 are as amended. Oh, no, they're not as amended because that was defeated. All right, so I read the resolution. All in favor? That's carried. All right, now we move to number 7, delegations. Matt Miller from the West Niagara Secondary School, well, maybe still Grimsby, not quite there yet. Welcome, Matt. Welcome, Matt.
Hello.
Hey, how are you, Matt?
Good, thanks. How are you, sir?
Good. I introduced you, but I think you weren't on yet, so I'll introduce you again. Welcome, Matt from Grinsby Secondary. Matt Miller from principal of Grinsby Secondary School, talking about the Please Take Your Seat fundraiser concert.
And I do have to apologize for the sound. I'm stepped out of band practice here, so you might hear the Hamilton All-Star Jazz Band adult band in the background. That's under the tutelage of another drummer right now while I'm here talking to you. So thank you for having me, Mr. Mayor and Council. We're here tonight to talk about the upcoming show that we're really excited about. Please Take Your Seat is a fundraiser for the theater at West Niagara Secondary School this Saturday, March 26th at 7 p.m. at the Wolverton Hall, 19 Elm Street here in Grimsby. The show is sponsored by Castle Point Numa the Wolverton, and Harley Valentine, who is the partner at Castle Point Numa and the lead for the Wolverton, is our key contact there and an alumnus of GSS. We're very appreciative of the work that he and the team have done, including Marilyn McRae, to put this show into motion. So the show features award-winning Niagara blues artist Spencer McKenzie with Miles Evans-Brana on keys, and James McGeer will open the show on jazz guitar, and he's a teacher here at Grimsby Music in town. The show tickets are available at West Niagara Secondary School website, which is westniagara.dsbn.org. We're especially excited about the show because it shows us something that we'll be able to do routinely in the very near future here in Grimsby, which is to have a collaboration between our school, local artists, and community members to bring incredible concerts and events to Grimsby. Audiences will access our town's restaurants, gas stations, shops, and support the town's economy while showing off everything we have to offer here in Grimsby. Our 750-seat theater, which is being built in West Niagara Secondary School, will be an easily accessible and bookable space open to our entire community. Seat dedications are still being accepted through the school website that I mentioned above, westniagara.dsbn.org. And there's various price points to donate at, so we can make sure our entire community is included and able to physically be a part of the theater.
Great. Thank you very much for your presentation, Matt, and look forward to seeing you on March 26th.
Yeah. It'll be very fun. Thank you, sir. Thanks to council as well.
Awesome. You get back to practice and have a great evening. All right.
Thanks very much.
See you soon, Matt. Thank you.
Got it.
Need a mover and seconder to receive the presentation or the delegation from Principal Matt Miller. Moved by Councillor Cadwell. Seconder, Councillor Dunstall. Moved by Councillor Cadwell, second by Councillor Dunstall. Resolved that the delegation from Grinsby Secondary School Principal Matt Miller be received. All in favor? That's carried. All right, we move to number 10, resolution, Niagara Region Council Indigenous Training Session. Need a mover and seconder. Moved by Councillor Bothwell, second by Councillor Frake. Any questions or comments? Seeing none, and moved by Councillor Bothwell, second by Councillor Frake. Resolved that council members of the town of Grinsby be permitted to attend and participate electronically in this special regional council meeting being held on March 31st, 2022 at 6 p.m. to receive Indigenous education and training in closed session in accordance with subsection 239.3.1 of the Municipal Act 2001. That the council of the town of Grinsby confirms that this session is for training and education purposes only, and no direction will be issued to staff, and no decisions or motions will be made that advance the business or decision-making of the council of the town of Grinsby. That the council of the town of Grinsby waive the rules of procedure to adopt the Niagara Region Procedural Bylaw 120-2010 as amended for the purpose and duration of the special regional council meeting being held on March 31st, 2022. That the council of the town of Grinsby authorize the delegation of the duties of the clerk to the regional clerk for the purpose and duration of the special regional council meeting in accordance with subsection 228.4 of the Municipal Act 2001. The regional chair, Jim Bradley, be appointed as the presiding officer for the purpose and duration of the special regional council meeting, and that the clerk be directed to provide a copy of this resolution to the regional clerk so that it may be included as part of the minutes of the special regional council meeting. All in favor? Councillor Cadwell, you want to speak?
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. It's not on this subject. It's just point of clarification. We're still on our council agenda, right?
That's correct.
Yeah, well, we just had Matt Miller, and I've got him in my hard copy that he was supposed to be a delegation on the committee of the whole. Has that changed at all?
Yes, he had a previous commitment later, so it
Right.
was changed today to council meeting to accommodate him.
All right, I'm fine with that, but I'm just following through my agenda and going like, he's not on the agenda, but that's okay. Thank you very much for the clarification.
All right, I read the resolution, actually calling for a recorded vote on this. Some hands weren't up. I really look forward to attending this. I will be there at Regional Council, but it is something that that everyone, in my opinion, needs to attend.
Councillor Bothwell,
Yes.
Councillor Dunstall,
Yes.
Councillor Frake,
Yes.
Councillor Cadwell,
Yes.
Councillor Sharp,
Yes.
Councillor Vane,
Yes.
Councillor Vardy,
Yes.
Mayor Jordan.
Yes.
That's carried.
All right, now we move to number 14, bylaws. Need a mover and seconder for the first reading. Moved by Councillor Frake, second by Councillor Vane. Moved by Councillor Frake, second by Councillor Vane. Resolved that leave be given to introduce bylaws 22-16 to 22-19 inclusive, and that same be read a first time. All in favor? That's carried. Need a mover and seconder for second and third reading. Moved by Councillor Vane, second by Councillor Vardy. Moved by Councillor Vane, second by Councillor Vardy. Resolved that leave be given to introduce bylaws 22-16 to 22-19 inclusive read a first time, now be read a second and third time, and finally passed, and that the mayor and town clerk do sign and seal the same and rule councils to the contrary notwithstanding. All in favor? Oh, Councillor Bothwell?
Yeah, sorry, I just have a question on clarification on 2216. I'm looking at the agenda and it says that the bylaw is to be added. Has that changed? Has the bylaw been added, or is this one that we're considering at committee of the whole that's going to then be voted on later? I'm confused why we're passing a bylaw we may not have discussed yet.
I believe we discussed
Councillor-
the tax
Through
collection
you,
policy at our last meeting.
Sarah, the clerk, I'm
Yeah.
sorry.
through you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, Councillor Bothwell, you might want to refresh your page because it has been added.
Thank you. That's all. I just, because the last version that I updated was just before this meeting, so I guess it's, I just didn't have a chance to read it. So I'm okay with voting for it, but I just didn't have a chance to read it. Thank you.
Okay, moved by Councillor Bain, second by Councillor Vardy. Resolved that Lee Beacon to introduce bylaws 22-16 to 22-19 inclusive read a first time, now be read a second and third time and finally passed, and that the mayor and town clerk do sign and seal the same and rule council to the contrary notwithstanding. All in favor? That's carried. All right, now we move to our announcements section. Councillor Bothwell.
Thank you, Mayor Jordan. I just want to quickly remind people that the Grinsby Public Library has got their spring author series tickets available for sale. The first event is March the 28th at 7 p.m. and tickets are available on their website for the 3 sessions, March 28th, April 25th, and May 24th. They're sold in a bundle. I think it's $30, and it's another excellent way to get familiar with some of your favorite authors and support the library at the same time. Thank you.
Councillor Vardy.
Thank you through you, Mr. Mayor. I do have a couple of announcements. First of all, about 2 weeks ago, I got a call at midnight from a close friend and neighbor that her house was on fire. At which point I called 911 and the police, the firefighters, ambulances all attended her home. She left her home, basically it was midnight. Her 2 kids and her dog left in their pajamas. And didn't have a stitch. The firefighters were there till about 5 o'clock in the morning. So and they handled things so well. They were very kind to all of us who sat outside there until 5 a.m. So first off, I would just like to say kudos to the Grinsby Fire Department for coming out and for putting out that fire, as well as to the police and ambulance that also attended the fire. That was amazing. The next day, I spoke with Stacy at GBF, and about 4 hours later, she had put together her and her staff clothes for the mother and the 2 kids, because I said they left without a stitch on. They were in their pajamas and bare feet. And Stacy had supplied everything you can imagine: clothes, boots, shoes, socks, underwear, toiletries. So I just want to sort of give a shout out to Stacy and GBF. It was amazing. That community effort that came together to help this family. It really was something, which leads me to my next announcement, which is I'll be co-hosting a volunteer recruitment event for GBF on Sunday, March 27th. So the morning after the concert, it'll be at Wolverton Hall. And we're trying to encourage volunteers to come forward and offer whatever they can. So, there's the retail and there's the food bank, but let's say you're an accountant and you'd be willing to give 10 hours of accountancy time, or you're an electrician, or, there's many people with many different kinds of skills. A lawyer, you might be able to provide a few hours of legal advice. So it doesn't mean that, or maybe just help with the hamper program. There's no age limit. So if you're a student trying to get your volunteer hours, this is a great place to do that and to get experience. You can also, any age can come and help out, whether it's on a regular basis or say just for the various hamper programs at Christmas and Easter. So I just encourage as many of you as possible to join me on March 27th at Wolverton Hall. for the GBF volunteer recruitment. Stacy and I really look forward to seeing you there. Thank you very much.
Councillor Cadwell.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. And this is kind of like old news, but I'm just going to read what I was planning to announce on March the 7th. It gives me great pleasure as Grinsby's Hospital rep on the Westlake Memorial Advisory Committee to Ellis Don. The contractor was selected as the preferred proponent to the new Westlake Memorial Hospital. Old news. I just want to refresh that again, and it's great news that the hospital is moving, on schedule. We're going to get a hospital. That's fantastic. So that's all I had. Couldn't do it on the 7th, but doing it now. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Cadwell. Councillor Sharp.
Yeah, thanks, Mayor Jordan. I just had one thing to announce. I know that this morning at 12:01 a.m. on March 21st, the province has removed a mandate for masks in Ontario. And I know that society is quite polarized over this issue. So I want to remind residents to be kind to both sides. Some people will wear a mask, some people will choose not to wear a mask, and that's their freedom to make that choice. And so remember to be kind. And I know the polarization makes it difficult. Maybe we can help to diffuse a situation or just not participate. And I think that will make things go more smoothly. That was all I wanted to say. Thanks very much.
All right. Thank you, Councillor Sharp. I do totally agree with you that the world right now is lacking kindness, and everyone can do their part to make more. And just to echo Councillor Cadwell, yes, it is really exciting to get West Lincoln Memorial Hospital with a contractor, Ellis Don, who is certainly capable of making the facility we want and need in West Niagara. So I can hardly wait till shovels in the ground. Now we move to our next council meeting is scheduled for April 4th, 2022, immediately following the Committee of the Whole. But tonight, the Committee of the Whole will be immediately following the closed session that we're going to move into now. So I'll read the electronic participation closed session statement declaration. Good evening, members of council. Before we begin the closed session, all members are reminded that any discussions in closed are to remain confidential as per our procedural bylaw and our code of conduct for the council of the town of Grinsby. Before we begin, I need each member that is attending electronically to confirm the following: that you understand the matters are to remain confidential, confirm that no one else is present with you, confirm that no one else can hear this closed session, and confirm that you are not using any electronic devices other than your tablet or computer for the purposes of this video conferencing only, and confirm that you're not recording this portion of the meeting. If you acknowledge all the above, please reply with "I understand" and confirm to all of the statements. Councillor Bothwell?
I understand and confirmed all the statements.
Councillor Dunstall?
I understand and confirm to all the statements.
Councillor Frake?
I understand and confirm to all the statements.
Councillor Cadwell?
I understand and confirm to all the statements.
Councillor Sharp?
Understand and confirm to all except the electronic devices.
Councillor Bain?
I understand and confirm to all the statements.
Councillor Vardy?
I understand and confirm to all the statements.
And I myself, I understand and confirm to all the statements. Need a mover and seconder to move into closed session. Moved by Councillor Bain, second by Councillor Frake. Moved by Councillor Bain, second by Councillor Frake. Resolved that council meet in closed session under section 2392C, a proposed or pending acquisition or disposition of land in the municipality or local board, pending acquisition or disposition of land. All in favor to go into closed? All right, we're now into closed. We'll see.
Recording in progress.
Welcome back to, we're in open now. All right, welcome back to everyone. We are out of our closed session now. Need a mover and seconder to receive the closed session information. Moved by Councillor Frake, second by Councillor Cadwell. Moved by Councillor Frake, second by Councillor Cadwell. Resolved that the update provided in closed session be received and that staff proceed with the direction provided in closed session. All in favor? That's carried. Need a mover and seconder for the confirming bylaw. Moved by Councillor Dunstall, second by Councillor Frake. Moved by Councillor Dunstall, second by Councillor Frake. Resolved that leave be given to introduce bylaw 2220 and that same be read a first time. All in favor? That's carried. Need a mover and seconder for second and third reading. Moved by Councillor Dunstall, second by Councillor Vardy. Moved by Councillor Dunstall, second by Councillor Vardy. Resolved that leave be given to introduce bylaw 22-20 read a first time, now be read a second and third time, and finally passed, and the mayor and town clerk do sign and seal the same, and rule council to the contrary notwithstanding. All in favor? That's carried. All right, meeting is adjourned. We will meet back for our committee of the whole meeting at 8:35. See you at 8:35.
Recording in progress.
All right. Good evening. I'd like to call the Committee of the Whole for Monday, March 21st, 2022 to order. Are there any disclosures of interest? Seeing none, we need a mover and seconder for the approval of the agenda. Moved by Councillor Dunstall, second by Councillor Bothwell. Moved by Councillor Dunstall, second by Councillor Bothwell. Resolved that the March 21st, 2022 Committee of the Whole agenda be approved. All in favor? That's carried. All right, now we move to the council endorsement package, Active Grinsby Advisory Committee of March 16th, 2022. A mover and seconder. Moved by Councillor Bain, second by Councillor Frake. Moved by Councillor Bain, second by Councillor Frake. Resolved that the council endorsement package for the March 16th, 2022 Active Grinsby Advisory Committee meeting be approved. All in favor? That's carried. All right, move to number 5, adoption of previous minutes. We have Grinsby Art Gallery, Active Grinsby Advisory, and Grinsby Museum. Questions or comments? Need a mover and seconder. Moved by Councillor Frake, seconder, Councillor Barty. Moved by Councillor Frake, second by Councillor Barty. Resolved that the Grinsby Art Gallery Board meeting minutes of March 10th, 2022, the Active Grinsby Advisory Committee meeting minutes of March 16th, 2022, and the Grinsby Museum Board meeting minutes of March 2nd, 2022 be received. All in favor? That's carried. All right, now we move to number 7, the consent agenda. Need a mover and seconder for the consent agenda. Moved by Councillor Dunstall, seconder, Councillor Frake. Moved by Councillor Dunstall, second by Councillor Frake. Resolved that the Committee of the Whole hereby approves the following items and the various consent items be approved on the recommendation as contained therein. FIN 22-06 2021 Development Charge Reserve Fund Statement, FIN 22-07 2021 Annual Building Permit Fee Report, FIN 22-08 Development Charge Interest Policy, DRS 22-05 Parks, Recreation and Culture Information Report, DPW 22-09 2021 Annual DWQMS Infrastructure Review. All in favor? That's carried. All right, now we move to the planning and development portion of the Committee of the Whole. 11.1, we have a delegation from Dana Anderson, MHBC, Grinsby Beach Study and Secondary Plan. Welcome, Dana.
Hi, thank you. I think I just got brought in. I hope I'm at the
All
right time.
Yes, you probably didn't hear my introduction then, Dana. So
No.
welcome and go ahead. I'm sorry you didn't hear that.
Oh, thank you very much, Mayor Jordan and members of council. I'll just, I have a very brief presentation, and I'm hoping that Peter can share his screen to walk council and those attending this evening through the presentation. So again, good evening, Mayor Jordan and members of council and those in the community tuning in this evening. My name is Dana Anderson, and I am a planner and part of the project team of consultants and staff who have worked with the community on the Grinsby Beach Secondary Plan study for the last year and a bit. I did want to make a note to thank Councillor Frake at the outset for his leadership and support throughout the study process. Next slide, please. So this evening you have a very detailed report from town staff, PA 2209, and I believe that's found at page 97 of your agenda. And that report provides a very comprehensive overview of the study process and contains the draft secondary plan and the draft zoning bylaw, and also provides a detailed overview of the comments and the responses to those comments as we've been iteratively moving through the process. So I'm going to spend a little bit of time just briefly highlighting some of the key points and changes of the study. Next slide, please. So just as a recap, the Grinsby Beach Land Use Study was focused on the area we know as Grinsby Beach. That area is highlighted here, and it was through the early consultation in the study process that there were some slight changes to the study area that began as a result of an interim control bylaw to study the area to look further at the appropriateness of changes to the land use planning framework. And so through that initial consultation, there were some minor adjustments made to the study boundary, including adding some of the lots to the east on the east side of Park Road North, as well as some areas to the south. The next slide, please. So the next few slides go through a detailed outline of the process that was undertaken through the study, and I won't go into this in detail other than to note that the study was organized into five phases, and each of those phases has involved technical research and review, public engagement and community engagement, as well as several meetings through both the Technical Advisory Committee known as the TAC and the Stakeholder Advisory Committee known as the SAC, which was made up of a number of area residents in the Grinsby Beach area. And I want to thank them all for their valuable time and input throughout this process. So throughout the process, as we moved from sort of the fact-finding background report, developing some visioning and defining the principles for the area, we also addressed the appropriate approach in terms of what land use planning framework was most appropriate for Grinsby Beach. And as is set out again in detail in the staff report, work was done to identify the use of a secondary plan for this area. And many may think of a secondary plan as identifying an area for growth and intensification, but in fact, secondary plans are often used to identify areas of character for the management and protection and enhancement of the character of those areas going forward. And that was certainly the case with Grinsby Beach. The next slide, please. So through the final three phases of the study, we find ourselves this evening at sort of the culmination of this process. As I noted, it's been very iterative as we've brought information forward and we've shared that and engaged with the community. We have responded and reviewed all comments and incorporated those into updates and some modifications as required, and I'll speak to those this evening. The next slide, please. Just in terms of the process and how the secondary plan and zoning bylaw have developed, The focus tonight is really on the approval of the final secondary plan and zoning bylaw. And that is a result of those many phases of process, which resulted in a planning report with recommendations that then translated into the policies and zoning provisions. But also there are a number of documents which are noted here and also included in your agenda package. And those include a tree strategy, urban design and heritage guidelines, an infrastructure plan and fiscal impact assessment, and an additional report with other activities that are identified by staff in terms of operational matters. I would note that all of these supportive studies help to support and implement the secondary plan and the zoning bylaw. The next slide, please. So the plan itself was developed with a series of events and included both online, and we were fortunate at the beginning of this process to have a little bit of a break where we were actually able to meet, albeit outside in person, to do some initial walking tours. But throughout the process, community engagement has been undertaken through virtual events, seminars, webinars, open houses, public meetings, as well as a number of additional outreach opportunities that town staff undertook. And as noted, the plan and zoning bylaw have been developed through this consultation process. Although somewhat constrained by the pandemic, we have had incredible input and turnout at the various stages of the process, and it's resulted in the updates and modifications that are being presented this evening to address those comments from the community. Next slide, please. So what we heard throughout the process was organized in many of our consultation summaries into what I would say is sort of two forms of or areas of comments. There were several issues and concerns that were raised that were very specific to land use and development. And when and wherever possible, all of those are now reflected in the new policies and schedules for Grinsby Beach, as well as the zoning provisions, and also the urban design and heritage guidelines and the tree strategy. But where those matters were not directly related to land use, they were also considered and have been addressed as operational matters that will continue to be addressed by staff. And those are set out in staff supplementary report PA 10 that's found in your agenda this evening. Next slide, please. So the secondary plan itself that's before you is a draft that has been again modified and updated. And that secondary plan addresses a number of issues that are very specific to Grinsby Beach. It sets out a very clear goal and a set of objectives to again guide land use planning and change through the area. It provides functional policies that address land use, managing the change, servicing and transportation, the natural heritage, including the shoreline, tree protection and tree enhancement, as well as parks, open space and trails. And the plan itself also sets out some detailed policies related to specific to Grinsby Beach in relation to cultural heritage and urban design. And the plan itself also creates 3 new and distinctive character areas with distinct policies for those areas to protect and enhance those areas going forward. And they include the core area, the northwest area, and the south. And as noted, each of these has its own distinct description and set of policies that relate to those characteristics and attributes to be protected and maintained, and also requirements to address and manage change as it comes forward. The next slide, please. So as we developed the secondary plan policies, there were some additional comments and modifications that we believe are appropriate to include with the final draft secondary plan. There were some minor changes and modifications to language to clarify some of the policies in the plan. And then specifically, the plan, as noted, contains a series of schedules and designations, most of which are carried through in the parent plan or the Town of Grinsby official plan. And one of the modifications was actually to recognize the unique density in the core area, since that core area would continue to be designated as low density residential. And so you'll see the modification here is to identify that notwithstanding the density policies in the parent plan, the core area is reflected of a lotting and development pattern that is unique, and replacement housing or new housing on vacant lots are to retain those existing densities. So we're not suggesting for that unique character to be removed to comply with those parent policies. However, any new lots that would be created would need to meet the required densities of the low density residential area and the zoning. And finally, there were some changes to the schedules in the plan, and this is also reflected in the cultural heritage and urban design guidelines. And there is a schedule in the plan, references L2, and this is important as it relates to the character areas, and in particular the core, where those views and vistas both into the shoreline and from the shoreline were amended to reflect sort of that reflection of views and vistas going out and in, and also a specific recognition of the views of the pier. The next slide, please. In terms of the zoning bylaw, this is an area where in the last public consultation that we had, we did hear some concerns ongoing as it relates to the Grinsby Beach zone and as it specifically relates to height. As many of you will know, the Grinsby Beach, the current zoning for Grinsby Beach is in essence what is called legacy zoning. So it allows existing uses and the existing homes as they're provided. And any changes to those uses are permitted with a 15% increase, but it's not specific as it relates to height. And so there were some concerns with respect to vacant lots and how one would undertake setting out what the provisions are for vacant lots, since there is no house to identify a particular setback that would be fixed with the Grinsby Beach zone. And so we did a few things in the zoning bylaw to improve the provisions for the area. And one was to establish a coverage for those vacant lots. And we had a number of comments from the community noting that the coverage on the existing lots is quite higher given the small size of the lots. So as a result of those requests as it relates to coverage, and also some comments in relation to height in Grinsby Beach, noting that 9 meters is sort of carried over through the bylaw as a general provision and perhaps a reduction in height should be considered. We undertook some additional work to look at heights and coverage through the core area. The next slide, please. When undertaking a review of height, we went back through our background report and we identified the average heights in all of the areas, and specifically in the core area, to identify that there is quite a range of heights throughout the area. And in looking at the changes that we were proposing to the bylaw, we noted examples of a number of properties that really reflect that range. And we wanted to ensure that if we were to reduce the height to 8 meters, that we weren't substantially impacting any of the existing homes, but also the ability of individuals to increase the size of homes by that 15% up to the 8 meters. And as you can see from this diagram, the majority of the existing homes have the ability to increase to that 8 meters and also will be well within that. The next slide, please. We also undertook some additional work in relation to coverage, and we looked at the average coverage of lots within the core area. And we noted a distinct pattern that where the lot areas are less than the standard provision of the 500 meters, the coverage is substantially higher than the provisions would set out. So for vacant lots, we wanted to ensure that some consideration was given to those lots less than 500 meters. And also for the lots larger than 500 meters, that the coverage was more reflective of what was permitted in the parent zoning. And so for that reason, in the bylaw itself, in the Grinsby Beach zone, for vacant lots that are greater than the 500 square meters, we have increased the coverage to 30% to be similar to the new Grinsby Beach 1 zone and the surrounding zones. And we've also increased for those lots that are less than 500 meters, the permission of up to 35%, And so based on these examples, you can see that that 35% would allow for many of those lots, albeit they're not vacant, to conform with the zoning bylaw once it's brought in. The next slide, please. And so those minor modifications to the zoning bylaw and changes to the secondary plan are, in our opinion, minor modifications that help to reinforce the overall direction of the plan and its implementation. In addition, in your package, you have a number of supporting documents, as I mentioned, including the urban design and heritage guidelines, and these also have been updated to reflect a number of comments that we received, including changes to the views and vista schedules, recognition of the Indigenous history of the lands, and also a reflection of some of the unique design features of Grinsby Beach that, while they may not be identified under the Heritage Act, are certainly very important in terms of the character of the area. The supporting documents also include the fiscal impact assessment and infrastructure plan, and this relates to existing servicing and connections and has some recommendations that are carried forward through the plan's policies. The tree strategy, which is providing a base plan that can be used for the development of a specific plan for Grinsby Beach, and that was undertaken with a considerable amount of input from our stakeholder advisory committee members, and many thanks to them for their input. And finally, the operational report that I mentioned that's being provided by staff that's addressing a number of staff operational issues, including some shoreline improvements, signage, as well as some other infrastructure matters. And Your Worship, that concludes my presentation. I'd be pleased to answer or respond to any questions from members of council. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your presentation, Dana. And I just ask council to hold their questions for just for Dana and this report right now. And then any other questions concerning anything else would be after the other delegation and the two planning reports. So any questions for Dana right now, or clarification or comments? Seeing none, Dana, thank you very much for your presentation. It was really thorough and really nice to see the hard work that both you and the stakeholders have done in Grinsby Beach. All right, you need a mover and seconder to receive the. Mover and seconder to receive. Moved by Councillor Cadwell, second by Councillor Frake. Moved by Councillor Cadwell, second by Councillor Frake. Resolved that the delegation from Dana Anderson be received. All in favor? And that's carried. Thank you, Dana. Have a good evening.
Thank you so much.
All right, now we move to our second delegation. Nicole Patterson, report PA 22-09. Welcome, Nicole. I think you're on mute, Nicole.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Yes,
we can. Yes, we can.
Okay. So one moment, and I will share my screen. Okay, 1 second. I'll just put this in slide. Okay, well, thank you very much. I appreciate very much the opportunity to speak to you, the council, mayor, but also all the residents that are probably chiming in currently. So my husband and I, my husband's Corey Slykerman, my name's Nicole Patterson. We own 33 Victoria Terrace, which is in the core of Grinsby Beach. And although our attorney has already submitted our opposition to the secondary plan, I really appreciate the opportunity to speak to you live and to tell you a little bit about our story, our circumstances, and hopefully to clear some of the misinformation that has been circulating on our application. We oppose primarily the height and lot coverage restrictions. We are also deeply concerned some of the heritage assessments and involvements. And we're also extremely concerned that with this new secondary plan, it's really going to have an adverse effect on property values, but mostly the litigations that are going to follow, which is an implication for all residents and taxpayers. So we have 2 lots. Each lot is 20 by 50. Currently, there is a house on one of the lots. That house takes up 20 by 50 feet. It's also 9 meters high. And our big concern is that changing lot coverages and height is actually going to change the fabric of the community. And it's also going to change the quality of life for residents, and it's especially not family friendly. So currently, most houses now are primary residences. Originally, when they were built, they were meant as seasonal summer homes, you know, where most of the living was outdoors. So this is the core area. Currently, as I mentioned earlier, and it's also noted in the staff plan, there is a variety of heights, shapes, and sizes of homes. And this is a great demonstration of that. And as I mentioned, our home is currently 9 feet and takes up the entire lot. There's also a lot of incidences where there's maximum lot coverage and very little physical spacing between houses. What's curious also is that many of these heritage homes, you know, they may not be designated as heritage, but they too have expanded. They may not have gone upwards, but they've essentially grown in order to make space for living. So, you know, we've just gone through a pandemic. We're all faced with the exorbitant rise in housing ownership. And really, you know, what we've come out of this is that, you know, our homes are more than a place to eat and sleep. They're now our offices, our gym, our meditation oasis, places where we do activities. We know that, you know, families, and in my case, my husband and I have 3 kids. So we're a family of 5. And, you know, we need space. And more of us now are relying on extended family and multi-generational families to compensate for the high cost of ownership. We also faced with our kids living at home for a far longer period of time than, you know, how long we stayed at home. They may be going off to residence in university, but a lot of them are coming back because they cannot afford either rent or home ownership. And then another issue is what happens when you have an elderly parent who can no longer take care of themselves. What do you do with them? Well, I don't know about you. I might have a 108-year-old grandmother and she's not living in a home. My aunt is taking care of her. And I would like to be able to do the same for my mother or my husband's mother should the time arise. So a little bit about the journey that we've been on. And I really think that this is important for you to hear our story because it's pretty atrocious what's happened. Prior to purchasing our house, we were advised to actually go to the town and see if our house was deemed heritage. We did so. We were told by your town planners, no, it was not heritage. We actually went back a second time before we purchased a home to find out if it was on something called an intended list. Again, the answer was no. So we felt very confident in purchasing this home, even though it was an absolute wreck. The smell alone was unbelievable. We went to the town originally with the design. We met with the town planners. They looked at it. They immediately said no. We said, well, what are you looking for? And they said, you know, we're looking for peak roofs and board and batten, etc. So we came back with this design. What happened next was they said to us, no, you can't build this because you actually have two separate lots. So these two 20 by 50 lots that I mentioned. So through our lawyer, we said, okay, well, how about allowing us to have the lots deemed? They outright refused. The next thing we know is our house is put on this intended heritage list because they want to save it. It's really interesting because I listened to a heritage meeting not too long ago with a gentleman who said that his house was on the intended list and that he wasn't concerned because there was no way that they would deem it heritage. Well, our house has 5 additions, completely vinyl cladded. There is nothing left of the original house. But what happens, and this is what the community needs to know, this is what happened to us. We actually had to hire our own heritage consultant at a fee of $6,000 to write a report. We actually had to pay lawyer fees of up to $20,000. We had to pay for incremental design fees. The next step was that finally the town turned to us and said, no, you're right, it has no heritage value. Those costs are sunk and we'll never get them back. So the next step was, okay, so this has been a horrible odyssey. What's our next plan? So we agreed to let the town planners dictate the new designs of the homes. We actually let them design it for us. I can show you tons of emails where they're actually sketching things and making demands and everything that they wanted. We gave it to them. Then, of course, as you know, this is where we're at today. 5 years in the game, we still don't have a house. What has resulted is mental stress, separation from our children, I mean, it's money aside. I don't really care about the money, but I do care about my mental health. And I really do care about the fact that my husband was robbed some really formative years with his children. So this is not really part of, you know, what we're objecting, but I really do need to bring this up because I think that there is too much focus on heritage designation. And we need to, as a community, to understand what is that burden. And it's not necessarily that I'm against heritage or anything like that, but you have to look at it with an eye as to, is this really gonna, is it worth it? Or are you creating a noose and draconian measures just to keep a house versus thinking of the people who are living in there and what that means to them. This is a great example. I don't know the people who live in these houses, but I do know that there's a tree growing into their homes. And if they were ever designated heritage, that is an incredibly unfair burden to these people. We also know that, you know, once it's heritage, it's very costly to upkeep. I know from my own experience, insurance, if you can get it, in our case, we were quoted a 400% increase if our house was designated. Renovations are not necessarily entirely environmentally friendly, and the list goes on. So, I mean, I feel that this plan is irresponsible. I feel that, you know, for example, with our 20 by 50 lot and the implications of 35% lot coverage would essentially result in a home. I don't think I've been speaking for 10 minutes. Hello?
Mayor Jordan, I move to allow a few more minutes.
Thank you. I appreciate that. You know, and this is what we all have to take into consideration. You know, this is not going to stop development, and it's not going to stop appeals. It's actually going to be very costly for everyone. In fact, before the interim bylaw came into effect, we actually reached out to the town and said, okay, like, can you just meet with us without prejudice? Like, let's figure this out. You know, we're not investors from Toronto. I'm actually from Niagara on the Lake originally. My husband's originally from St. Catharines, but not that that should matter. But, you know, we just wanted to have a home with our children who go to school in Grinsby. This should never have happened. It's also going to change the fabric of the community, as I've illustrated in the photos. It's a contradiction to the provincial housing plan. And worse, it really places too much value on houses before people. You know, I can tell you some horror stories that have happened to us. I mean, we actually had people camped out on our front lawn when we were legally taking down some trees. And unfortunately, one of the town councillors, even though they had been at a heritage meeting before and had been informed by Walter Basic and Janice Hogg that these weren't heritage trees, they still decided to post on their public Facebook page our full address and say that we were tearing down heritage trees. And you know, you may think that that's nothing and that's great to push your agenda, but you know what happened? Our children were afraid to come visit us because they saw all the nonsense on social media. So I really would like the town to be very transparent about these situations, what it's costing all of us. If you are going to vote on this plan tonight, I request that it's a recorded vote, because if it can happen to Grinsby Beach, it can happen to other communities also, and people need to know. So thank you. I apologize for the aggravation in the tone of my voice. But this has been a horrible, horrible situation. And really, it should have been avoided right from the very beginning. Thank you so much. And I'm pleased to answer any questions if you have any. Thank you.
Thank you. We need a mover and seconder to Councillor Bothwell. We need a mover and seconder to receive the presentation. Moved by Councillor Vane. Seconder, Councillor Frake. Moved by Councillor Vane, second by Councillor Frake. Resolved that the delegation from Nicole Patterson be received. All in favor of receiving
Recorded
the
vote, please. Recorded vote, Mr. Mayor.
all right. Councillor Baines requested a recorded vote to receive the delegation.
Councillor Bothwell,
Yes.
Councillor Genstow,
Yes.
Councillor Frake,
Yes.
Councillor Cowell,
Yes.
Councillor Sharp,
Yes.
Councillor Vane,
Yes.
Councillor Vardy. Yes. Mayor Jordan.
Yes.
That's carried.
Thank you for your presentation, Nicole. You have a good evening. Now we'll move to report 11.2A, PA 22-09, Grinsby Beach Study and Secondary Plan. Welcome, Terry. Go ahead.
Hi, thank you. I just wanted to briefly talk about it. Dana has basically went through what's in the report. You also have the secondary plan is included, all the comments that we have received from the public meeting. The schedules are there, as well as the supporting documents as well. So thank you.
All right, now you need a mover and seconder to for this. Councillor Bothwell.
I'm sorry, are we going to be speaking to the report and the draft OP and ZBA now? Is that is this the,
Yeah, I'm just asking for a mover and seconder to get the discussion going. So,
thank you. I'll move it.
all right. Moved by Councillor Bothwell, seconded by Councillor Frake. Questions or comments before I read the resolution? Councillor Bothwell.
Sorry, so I'm just wondering if we're supposed to be commenting on the full report now.
Sarah?
Yes,
Yeah, so on report PA 22-09, yes, that's what we're discussing now.
Okay. Sorry, I'm just getting my questions. Oops. Got lost it. Sorry, I'm going to defer and I'll just wait and I'll let other people speak first. If there's, we're speaking on the Grinsby. I'm sorry. I'm totally, Terry, I'm totally lost here because you gave a synopsis of, you just said your report is there and everything. This is the official plan and the zoning bylaw amendment that we're dealing with at this moment. Is that correct?
Yes, through the mayor. This is the official plan, as well as receipt of all those attachment documents that are all in Appendix 8.
Okay, sorry. So my questions were, and I emailed you earlier about some of the changes that you've just put into the documents, because the public may not be aware that the original zoning bylaw that was included had an error in it. And maybe you could clarify, because I did send you that email and ask that you could correct it from, it originally said where development is proposed on an existing vacant lot in the Grinsby Beach zone, the maximum lot coverage shall be 30% for lots equal or greater to than 300 square meters and 35% for lots less than 300 square meters. And that was amended to read 500 be in conformity with the GB1. I just want to confirm that that change was made as I emailed to you. The other question, the other point that was changed was just a typo on a reference to the zoning bylaw 1445, and it was just still referring to an old bylaw. And then a very important one as well on the zoning bylaw draft, the column that said minimum building depth for the new GB1 zone of 20 meters, but that should have read maximum building depth. If you could just clarify that those points were corrected, that would be great. And then I just have two other key points to make, please.
Through the mayor, yes, those changes were all sent to the clerk, and they were just an oversight. They were in the original draft. They just must have been missed in the final collection. Sorry.
So thank you. I think that's just really important that
Thank you.
Those were captured. Thank you. Then I think what I read, I appreciate all the hard work, and I know that planning staff did a lot of community engagement to get to where we are today. So for one thing, thank you for listening to the community and doing the best you could to put something together that would be responsive to what their needs are. I did hear, and I still continue to hear from some community members that it does some resolution to the needs that they've addressed, but others are still thinking that there could be more done. And the strongest tool in the toolbox would be a heritage conservation district. I'd just like to keep the community's door open, that should they reach out to do that, that we are responsive to that. And if it's not anywhere in these documents and it's not in the budget, that we consider that for future. But I think it's really, really important that if their voices come forward stronger, that they ask to do more, that we listen to that. There is a real fear that without having stronger designations within the Grinsby Beach core area for the homes. I know that your report did mention that there's 200 homes to be added to the register, which only protects them for 60 days from demolition. And then there's a scramble to try to get them the heritage designations on them. Many of those homes have the historical and contextual relationships to the Grinsby Beach story, as well as the buildings and structures themselves. And there's a real fear that that the changes that could occur, even with the secondary plan in place, could eventually make it unrecognizable, and we could lose possibly the most intact example in Canada of a Chautauqua Methodist campground community. It's just so unique and precious. So I think we just have to be, that's what the community is saying we still need to do. The other thing I did find in the tree inventory and private property trees, there was a statement that says the town doesn't currently have the authority to prevent property owners from removing trees that are located on private property, and it talks about that that we could do it, but that it would involve significant resources to be implemented, and that it didn't sound like there was any will to do that. I think that we're hearing very strongly from the community that tree canopy is important through the Act of Grinsby, through Grinsby Green, through the official plan reviews. And I think that we need to do everything we can, not just in the Grinsby core area, but throughout Grinsby to put in protections for private property trees, whether that's that we do reach out to the community to find out how we could look at that. There are other communities that have very successfully done it. Yes, they might be larger than ours, but I think we still owe the community just to reach out and find out what options are available on that. One of the ones we could do immediately, and I do hope that I've mentioned this before, when we do pre-consultation agreements for developments, whether it's one property being redeveloped or more, that those pre-consultation agreements include, like Fort Erie does, penalties for any removal of trees prior to formalization of a site plan or a building permit. And that there's actually Fort Erie has a $500 per lot. They have a retainer that they hold on to at the pre-consultation should any developer remove trees. We need to really seriously look at doing that as our pre-consultation. It's not a hard thing to do. Other municipalities do it. And we need to put a deterrent in there that potential developers or property owners who are looking to redevelop don't go clear cut, poison their trees, whatever, kill them before there's an opportunity for an arborist to do the proper due diligence on them, and that there is a viable penalty for that. So those are just things that I touched on that came out through this report. I think that other than that, the 8-meter height I think is really does speak to what the community wants, and it does try to keep that overwhelming density down on new redevelopment and infill. So I appreciate the hard work that the consultants and staff have put into this. It might not be perfect. It might need some refinement, and I know the policies as they stand aren't necessarily enforceable. We've seen that in the West End. You can have urban design, you can have guidelines. The developers take it as a guideline. They don't take it as a shall. And to enforce it, we may be struggling. So I think we just need to really, really be cognizant of everything we can do to make sure that when we say we're going to protect this area, that we do so. So thank you very much, Terry and staff.
Terry, you had your hand up. You had a comment.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Yeah, just a couple things in response and through you, Mr. Mayor. With respect to the HCD, the secondary plan just lays the foundation. So should council choose to do that in the future, it will be well set up to do that a little bit better. With respect to the tree inventory and personal trees, I think that's covered more in the PH 2210, which is the next report that will be looked at with the operational issues. So I think there's some further discussion we can have there about trees. And I think there's some potential future studies that might be looked at for that. Thank you. Sorry.
All right, Councillor Sharp.
Thank you, Mayor Jordan. What is this? What's the average size of the lots in Grimsby Beach?
The consultant, through the mayor, the consultant measured it. It's approximately 230 square meters is the average lot size, but there's wide variety in the core, especially. 230.
So that's 2,500 square feet. So we can allow like 30% on those lots, which is what's that, about 800 square feet?
Yeah. In the report, I sort of took an average square lot, which would be, if we took 230 square meters, I know square feet, but it would equate to about an 870 square foot first floor, and then times 2, and that would be roughly a 1,700 square foot home on that lot. That also provides for providing parking on the lot itself, and because parking is one of the considerations that the community is really brought up often to us, that is lacking, because some of these lots, they build to the extent of the property and don't include the 2 spots for a residential dwelling on it. So those are some of the considerations we had with looking at lot coverages.
So thank you. And what about the lots that are on the smaller end of that average? So some of those lots, like the ones at Victoria Terrace, sound like they're about 1,000 square feet, like 20 by 50. And so on those lots, you could only build like a 350 square foot home, 2 stories, 700 square feet. Maybe you get some attic in there, 1,000 square feet. Like it seems like it's a fairly small home on those lots.
Through the mayor, there is a potential to apply for a minor variance. With full consideration of all of those factors. So it's not saying that they have to do that. They have the opportunity to apply for minor variance, considering all the detail of that lot.
So that's helpful, because so the general rule is kind of based on the average size, and a person with a smaller lot could apply for a minor variance to make some changes to that general rule. Because I can see that just pragmatically, I don't want to live in a 300 or 700 square foot home. It doesn't seem like it's really financially or feasible or just rational to live like that. So what will happen if so what about, so for example, this is 33 Victoria Terrace. I remember when the application came in, it was before I was
Councillor Sharp, I just caution you, because 33 Victoria Terrace is at the appeal stage at Committee of Adjustment, so I don't think it'd be prudent to discuss individual lots at this time.
Okay, so then what I do want to talk about is the house on 3rd Street. It's across from Bell Park. It's a light blue home. It's newer. How big is that home? Sorry, do you know the home I'm talking about?
I'm sorry, I'm not.
Can
not quite sure. Sorry.
I call a point of order? I think we're getting into talking about people's personal homes at this point in time. I think we need to move away from it.
Okay, so let me finish. I'll explain the point that I'm getting to.
Well, I just you can't be identifying individual properties right now. It's not fair for staff, quite honestly. So
it was on the report. I think it was number 4 3rd Street. It's across from Bell Park. It's a newer home. And so I'm thinking, and I'm asking the question with regard to if homes are built newer. That home, it's board and batten. It's light blue. It suits the neighborhood. It's much bigger than the other homes, but it's got a porch like the other homes. It's a board and batten look. It's got to be on the bigger end of that scale. But I guess we don't have that information. It was on the report.
Through the mayor, if there is existing homes that are higher than that that height in the zoning bylaw, that would be legal non-conforming. So it automatically allows for recognizing that there may be homes that are higher than what the zoning bylaw would allow.
There are existing homes with more than 35% lot coverage.
Yes, as Dana's presentation pointed out, there's some homes that take virtually the entire lot, but and that's where some of the operational issues were coming to light, where there isn't parking for those homes. There isn't some of those extra things that they wanted to also include on the lot. So there's a lot of components there, and I see Dana has her hand up, so hopefully she can be recognized.
Okay, I'd like to hear that.
Yeah, I through you, your worship, to Councillor Sharp, I did want to note that the uniqueness in Grimsby Beach is such that many of those smaller homes on the smaller lots can be replaced in the exact location and size that they exist today. And the bylaw allows for even a slight increase up to 15% to build above in the case where it might be a lower height. The home you're referring to, based on our review, is a 2-story home, and it appears, without knowing the exact height, that to the midpoint of the roof, it is well below the 9 meters. I think it's at about 8.36 meters. So it's a little taller than the 8 meters, but it would be well within its existing zoning because it was obviously created prior to this new 8 meters being put in place. The coverage provisions are only for vacant lots, and there's very few of them, but they would not have, the zoning bylaw does not set out what the setbacks or the coverage would be for a vacant lot. So that's what we're adding in. Anyone that has those existing homes built out can replace those and increase those based on the current bylaw, and we're not changing that.
Okay. Well then, thank you. I don't have any more questions.
Councillor Dunstall.
Thank you, Worship. I just wanted to add that the Grinsby Beach is a very complicated area, and I think that this is a very comprehensive package. It covers every aspect, and it wasn't easy, I could imagine, and I think we needed something like this to create an overall protection for the area because it is so unique. And my hat's off to everyone that participated in this this document, these and all the work that went into it, and having the residents involved in it. And this is the culmination of all that hard work. And I firmly support it. It's what it was needed for the longest time. And on previous term of council, I didn't think we'd ever get anywhere near this. There was just a resistance from the residents, and so here we are, where we can actually protect it. And I think I would agree with Councillor Bothwell. I think we need to look at a Heritage Conservation District next to continue to protect it for the long term, because it's such a historical attribute to our town as a whole. It's very unique. Many people come to see the painted sisters, as they call them, and it's quite a unique spot. So I just want to thank staff and the consultants for all the hard work that they did to bring it to this point, and I'll be supporting it.
Councillor Frake.
Thank you, Mayor Jordan. I've read all of the documents, and I think I understand most of them, but I'm quite pleased. I mean, I have to put my hand up and thank Terry and her team, and Dana and her team. This has been a long time coming, through a very difficult time with COVID. The fact that you just went to great lengths to include all of the residents you possibly could include in the research and development of this particular document is great. So I certainly will support it, and thank you once again. As I say, it was complicated, it was stressful. There was practically fist fights at some point in time, I think, about some of the things we got into, but we got there. And yes, thank you very much. It may not be perfect, like nothing is, but I think it's as perfect as we're going to get it for now, and we can go to the next step when the time comes, the heritage study. So thank you very much, and yes, I will support this. Thank you.
Councillor Cadwell.
Thank you, Mayor. Just comments. Yeah, having lived very close to Grinsby Beach, growing up in Grinsby, partly, it is a very unique place within itself. It's I know, as Councillor Bothwell said, it is probably one of a kind, one of the most unique little communities within a great community. So I just want to thank staff too. And as Councillor Dunstall mentioned, this was brought up at the previous council, and there was challenges. There certainly was. And you know what? the staff, and I have to give a lot of credit to our former planner, Antonetta, who was a very steadfast, working with everybody on this too. So, and I will support this. And I just want to say thank you and really congratulations for all the hard work that's been done by everybody involved and the involvement of the residents in the community. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you. Seeing no further questions, again, I just want to thank staff, Terry, and the consultant, Dana, and all of staff, Bianca as well. What a job well done to get some protection into Grinsby Beach, which is really something like other councillors have said tonight, is just a unique thing in all of North America, quite frankly. The history that's gone by with the Methodist Temple and all the camping areas, and when there was daily ferry service from Toronto in the summers, Grinsby was quite the happening spot then on Grinsby Beach, and it's amazing that we still have it intact, and the fact that we're protecting it and can move forward to protect it even more in the future is just very important. So I have a mover and seconder. I'll read the resolution. Moved by Councillor Bothwell, second by Councillor Frake. Resolved that report PA 22-09 staff recommendation report proposed Grinsby Beach secondary plan, official plan amendment OPA number 11, and supporting zoning bylaw amendment dated March 21st, 2022 be received, and that Grinsby Beach secondary plan OPA number 11 and associated schedules attached to this report as Appendix C and E respectively be approved, and that the amendment and schedule to the town zoning bylaw 14-45 attached as Appendix D and F respectively be approved, and that council adopt the subsequent bylaws prepared for OPA 11 and the amendment to the zoning bylaw, and that notification be provided to all relevant stakeholders of the adoption of the official plan amendment and passing of the zoning bylaw amendment. Recorded vote.
Councillor Bothwell,
Yes.
Councillor Dunstall,
Yes.
Councillor Frake,
Yes.
Councillor Cadwell,
Yes.
Councillor Sharp,
Yes.
Councillor Vane,
Yes.
Councillor Vardy,
Yes.
Mayor Jordan.
Yes.
That's carried.
All right, now we move to report PA 2210, Grinsby Beach operational issues. Well, Brandon, are you leading that one? Welcome, Brandon. Good to see you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Good evening, Mayor, Mr. Mayor and Council. First off, I just wanted to say thank you to the entire team of people who were involved in pulling all the information together for this report. It was a large team effort. I do apologize for the length of the report, but I do think it was important for us to provide a comprehensive summary of some of the matters that we were dealing with that were brought forward to the public through that public consultation process. So I'm going to spend a few minutes just giving you a high overview or high level overview of the report, and then we'll open up for questions. Members from other departments here as well, planning, rec and parks, building, bylaw, who could answer questions as well. So just starting off with land ownership, we have a section in there beginning on page 2. It outlines some of the background into the historic context of how the land came to be what it is today. Appended to the report, we've provided a map which identifies lands in the study area, which is color coded based on ownership type. So we're hoping that through this map, it'll help clarify some of the questions that were raised as part of the study with respect to which lands were public and which lands were private. So I'm happy to answer questions if there are any about that following the report presentation. Transportation parking. So on page 5, table 1, we provide a summary of the changes we have or will be making concerning traffic signage. The changes include better delineating of the runway roads through signage and pavement markings, putting playground signs at Bell Park, and some enhancements of the pedestrian crossing at Lake and Grand Avenue. In table 2, we provide page 6, we provide some analysis recommendations with respect to the parking improvements in the area. We will be implementing additional parking restrictions on Tupper and Mar, essentially adding restrictions to one side of the road, and we'll bring that forward to council later as part of a bylaw update. Essentially, these changes are intended to lessen the vehicle pedestrian conflict points, improve traffic flow, and ensure emergency vehicles are able to access the beach area at peak times where visitors are parked near access to the beach. So trying to restrict parking on both sides of the roads, which can restrict the traffic flow through that area and make it difficult for emergency vehicles to access. We'll also be enhancing wayfinding signage. So we're proposing to put in the municipal green parking signs, again, which will help direct visitors to the parking lot, specifically at Bell Park. We'll also note that we'll be completing some proactive parking enforcement with the Grinsby Beach area, ensuring the area is being patrolled throughout the day as part of the normal patrol route. Later in the report, under the tourism section, we speak to some content that we've added to our webpage. The focus on this was provide information to visitors of the area, and while at the same time encouraging them to be respectful of the residents who live there. So again, we're trying to make sure that that's communicated to visitors, who encouraging them to visit the area, but at the same time being respectful to the people who live there. Shoreline erosion. So page 7, we've provided some commentary with respect to the responsibilities associated with shoreline protection, namely what the town is responsible for versus what the responsibilities are in terms of the private landowners. We've also outlined efforts that the town has been making with respect to shoreline protection in the areas of our road allowances and beaches, including the approach we've been taking, partnering with adjacent landowners to complete shoreline works through joint projects. Also, just to give you an idea of the shoreline protection efforts that we've completed in the area over the last 20 years or so, we prepared a map. It's in Appendix E. It provides an overview of the various shoreline protection installations which have occurred over that period of time. And it shows both public and private, and in some cases where we've partnered with private landowners to carry out joint projects. And then we've also just identified that the 2 remaining installations, which are on our 5-year capital horizon, once completed, all of the road allowances, beaches, and stormwater outlets in that area will have been shoreline protected or protected from erosion. With respect to trees, page 8, we talked about trees, tree protection and conservation. Essentially, we provide an overview of the various programs we have in place for inventorying, planting, maintaining trees, including within the Grinsby Beach area. We also speak to some of the challenges we have in maintaining trees in these areas, as well as some of the limitations that are present with respect to the trees that are located on private lands. In terms of planting new trees, we're in the process of putting out a joint tree supply and planting tender. It's between Public Works and Rec and Parks, able to carry over some unspent tree planting funds from 2021, which will set us up for a large tree planting program coming this year. And we'll certainly be looking at ways that we can provide additional trees in that Grinsby Beach area, as well as other locations within the town. On the heritage side, on page 11, we note that approximately 200 heritage resources in Grinsby Beach area that are currently under review. And staff will be providing more information on this through the Heritage Advisory Committee, and that's prior to the lifting of the interim control bylaw. We've also produced a couple of heritage plaques for Bell Park and Grinsby Park gates, and are hoping to have them installed this summer. Lastly, on the infrastructure side, so we speak to the municipal services on page 11. So it's water, wastewater, and stormwater. Again, just at a very high level, we speak to the general condition of this infrastructure, as well as the rough timelines we can expect. Rehabilitation will be needed for the different types of services in conjunction with our normal rehabilitation program. So that was a high-level overview. I'm happy to answer any questions if there are any.
Thank you for that report, Brandon. There's certainly a lot going on down at Grinsby Beach. Councillor Frake.
Thank you, Mayor Jordan. Thank you for that report, Brandon. Very extensive, I must admit, and I'm so happy to see a lot of these things have already happened or going to be happening very shortly, which is great. So throughout the summer, you're going to be, this year, you're going to be doing a lot of this work, which is great. So I'm just wondering, actually, this question is probably for Walter or somebody. There's a lot of houses and properties in that whole area down there, and there's a lot of discussion and questions around who owns what building or what piece of land. Is there some way that a neighbor can find out who owns the property adjacent to them, behind them, beside them, or whatever? Is there some way they can find out that? I mean, is that confidential information, or can they find out? I mean, this is a question I get asked quite frequently, actually.
I think I could answer that. If not, I will defer to Walter. Walter, if I speak out of turn, let me know. Through MPAC records, we have roll books up front at the town office. Those are public information. So the resident come in and look at the specific roll for that property, which will provide the ownership information in there. So yes, that information is available. We don't have it posted in terms of an electronic format or anything like that, but they are available for them to come in and obtain that information.
I think you're aware, Brandon, of one specific property down there, which is the
clerk just has a clarification. Sarah?
Sorry, I just wanted to clarify that, Brandon, if you don't mind. So for privacy purposes, the assessment rule that we have, the rule books provides everything except the ownership. The ownership falls under the land registry office. So you need to go there to do a title search.
Yeah, thanks, Sarah. And the reason why I asked that question, and I think Brandon was involved in one of these queries there not so long ago, there was a property that wanted to do some work on shoreline protection. And they wanted to know who their neighbor was so they could contact them and help, so that it might help finance the amount of work that would go into the shoreline protection, because I believe it had to be financed privately. You remember that? I don't want to start throwing names out. So, but Brandon, you may remember that. I think it was you that I was talking about at the time. So they have to go through. I'll go back to Sarah now. So they have to go through. What do they have to go through, Sarah, to do that? If they want to find who their neighbor is and ask them if they want to participate in the finances of the shoreline protection, how would they find out, and how would they go about doing that?
Mr. Mayor, yes, the land ownership has to go through a request through the land registry office for a title search, and they would be able to get the land ownership information through that. And any financials, it would have to go through a freedom of information through the municipality. So, I mean, there are obviously confidential matter issues with the finance piece, but it would go through an FOI. Okay,
thank you for that. Anyways, that's it for me. Anyways, a great report, very thorough, very comprehensive, and I'm so pleased for the people in my ward where most of this work is going to be going on. So thank you, and I look forward to seeing lots of people down in the beach, lots of our staff down in the beach doing work. Thank you.
Councillor Cadwell. Oh, sorry, Brandon, did you want to say something?
Oh, no, I just said you're welcome.
Okay, all right, perfect.
Sorry.
Councillor Cadwell.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. Great report, a lot of information, a lot of reading this weekend with the Grinsby Beach, Brandon. So question I have is with regards to the street signs at Grinsby Beach. And I just sent you an email with a picture of the heritage street signs that are down in Port Dalhousie. I don't know if that was in your report and I missed it, I apologize. I said there was a whole lot of reading going on, but are we looking at a special type of street signs for the like where they have, you know, the 6th Street, 7th Street, for all the streets down in the Grinsby Beach heritage area there?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, that's not something I have looked at, but it's certainly something we could look into if that's the the direction of council. Certainly something we can look at is, I know there are certain areas in maybe Niagara on the Lake or different areas where they've identified certain areas have specific signage. So that is definitely something we can look at if it is the direction of council.
Yeah, I think that'd be something very worthy for representation of Grinsby Beach. The pictures I sent you were from Port Dalhousie, and the photo shows a couple street signs, and it has the very top of the street sign. It says Heritage District. What I was really impressed about at the bottom of the street sign, under the name of the street, it has the year. I thought that'd be really special for Grinsby Beach. So, anyways, I'll work with you on that one, Brandon. We can have a good conversation, and yeah, I think that would look great for Grinsby Beach. So, that's it. Thank you.
Councillor Bothwell.
Thank you, Mayor Jordan. Thank you, Brandon. In the report on page 2, it talks about the legal plans, the plans in the area, and so there was a lot of discussion initially when this land use planning study rather than an HUD was put forward, and with respect to the actual lot fabric, because the community was concerned whether it was a valid plan. And it says in here, Plan 45, 45A, and 68, and the validity of those plans in light of the Planning Act. And some initial legal research has been done regarding this issue, and it's anticipated that a future report will be brought to council with recommendations on next steps. This was part of a discussion that came up with committee of adjustment as well when there was a severance proposed. And so I think this legal lot fabric thing, I'm hoping we didn't put the cart in front of the horse. Basically, we just approved a secondary plan and a zoning bylaw amendment, and we don't have the legal lot fabric ironed out yet. So there was a workaround put in the discussion with the consultant that lot owners can do a deeming bylaw to merge lots and things like that. I'm just still very concerned that we haven't done our due diligence on the legal ramifications of the lot fabric and that deeming bylaw. So hopefully, if you can help me with that, I know you're talking about recommendations and next steps coming. I'm just hoping it isn't going to significantly impact, or like how that would impact the secondary plan we just approved and the zoning bylaw. Thank you.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I was going to defer to Terry. Yeah.
Okay, perfect.
Hi, yeah, that's something we've been talking to our legal representatives about, and they are looking into that further. There's the lots that people use, and some of the houses might be on a couple and stuff like that. So we're trying to get a fulsome approach that we're going to bring forward to you, and it will have much more details in the report coming forward, but it should not impact the zoning bylaw and official plan.
Okay, thanks. I just, you did that big map of who owns what, and we really didn't get into the meat of it in the secondary plan. So I just hope that it's not a gap that is going to come back to bite us. Thank you.
All right, seeing no further questions or comments, need a mover and seconder. Moved by Councillor Frake, second by Councillor Dunstall. And a recorded vote.
Councillor Bothwell?
Right, this is just receiving the report, right?
Yes.
I'm a yes.
Councillor Dunstall?
I'm a yes.
Councillor Frake?
Yes.
Councillor Cowell?
Yes.
Councillor Sharp?
Yes.
Councillor Vane?
Yes.
Councillor Vardy?
Yes.
Mayor Jordan?
Yes.
That's carried.
Thank you very much, Brandon and Terry. All right, now we move to number 12, correspondence. Need a mover and seconder. All right, we're doing them all separately. So this is for the rural settlement boundary review. So need a mover and seconder for that. Moved by Councillor Vane, second by Councillor Bothwell. Moved by Councillor Vane, second by Councillor Bothwell. Resolved that the following correspondence items be received. Rural settlement area boundary review. All in favor? That's carried. Now we need a mover and seconder for Autism Ontario correspondence. Moved by Councillor Frakes, second by Councillor Barty. Moved by Councillor Frakes, second by Councillor Barty. Whereas World Autism Day will be recognized on April 2nd, 2022 in Canada, thanks to Senator Jim Munson's Bill S-206, an act respecting World Autism Awareness Day. And whereas autism spectrum disorder, ASD, affects more than 135,000 Ontarians, autism spectrum disorder is a neurodevelopmental disorder affecting 1 in every 86 Canadian children, as well as their friends, family, and community, and approximately 1 to 2% of the Canadian population is on the autism spectrum. And whereas ASD is a spectrum disorder, which means it not only manifests itself differently in every individual in whom it appears, but its characteristics will change over the life of each person as well. A child on the autism spectrum will become an adult on the autism spectrum. And whereas Autism Ontario is the leading source of information and referral on autism and one of the largest collective voices representing the autism community, since 1973, Autism Ontario has been providing support, information, and opportunities for thousands of family and individuals across the province. And whereas Autism Ontario is dedicated to increasing public awareness about autism and the day-to-day issues faced by individuals with autism, their families, and the professionals whom they interact. The association and its regions share common goals of providing information and education, supporting research, and advocating for programs and services for the autism community. And therefore be it resolved that Council of the Town of Grinsby hereby declares April 2nd as World Autism Day. All in favor? That's carried. All right, and need a mover and seconder for the third correspondence, Niagara Pride Week. Councillor Vane. Councillor Cadwell. Moved by Councillor Vane, second by Councillor Cadwell. Excuse me. Resolved that the request by Pride Niagara for a flag raising at Town Hall on Monday, May 30th, 2022 be approved, and that on behalf of Council, the Mayor be directed to deliver a statement of support for Niagara's LGBTQ+ communities, Pride Niagara, Niagara Pride Week, and International Pride Month during the opening remarks of the June 6, 2022 Council meeting. All in favor? That's carried. Next meeting of the Committee of the Whole will be held on April 4th, 2022 at 6:30 p.m. Meeting is adjourned. Good night, everyone. Have a good evening.